It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele and this is the Breakfast Club. And today in our program, we'll be talking to Dr. Ronny Sibanda, who is the director of the Institute of Rural Technologies. We want to know from him what are the programs that they're doing to work with communities in rural areas. We know this year we have had a good rain, or it's promising to be a good year when it comes to the rains. So what are communities doing to make sure that they harvest the rain, to make sure that they use proper methods, not only to prevent climate change, but also to make sure that they have good yields? But before we talk to him, I just want to remind you that over the last week or so, we have seen an increase in the number of people who are testing positive, but we also have seen an increase in the number of people who are dying daily because of COVID. I think we've gone to days when people, over 30 people, 20 people are dying in the 24 hours, and we can prevent that. Please make sure where you are, when you're doing your business, be it in the banks, in hospitals, Emma Market, Lapa, try to maintain a distance, try to always wear a mask and sanitize, because COVID is real. And without wasting your time, let's cross over to Dr. Sibanda, where we are talking about his organization and what they are doing, working with rural communities to try and improve the livelihoods of those in rural areas. Can you briefly tell us what is the Institute for Rural Technologies?
The Institute for Rural Technologies is a private voluntary organization, commonly known as a non-government organization. And what that means is that it is focusing on development and is legally constituted and registered within the Zimbabwe laws.
So when was it set up?
It was set up in 2009 as a trust, but over time it then transformed to be a PVO in 2013.
So operating as a PVO, it has almost had now about 7 years.
Yes, correct.
Would you say there are any major differences between a trust and a PVO?
Trusts are viewed as very private and closed, but PVOs are a bit more open. And they carry the notion of working with communities, which is what is our interest.
Yeah. Are you a national organization, or you're just based in Bulawayo?
We are based in Bulawayo. In other words, our headquarters is in Bulawayo, but we work throughout the Zimbabwe with a bias to Matabeleland region, both Mat North and Mat South, but we are very open to work anyway. In fact, we have done so throughout the country.
Yeah, I mean, one would ask that in the maybe over 10 years that you have existed, what have you been doing? What do you do?
The primary focus of our work is building capacity and strengthening capacities of rural communities. When we think about building, we are looking at a situation where maybe for some purposes there is very little or nothing in that community, but it's a big requirement in order for them to develop. But when we are talking about strengthening, we look at what exists within the community, and then we work towards making it stronger and giving us more results.
So what are some of the projects that you've done over the years, and in which areas?
Maybe let me start off and say we have this strategy of forming networks, what we call knowledge networks. First of all, within our own staff, we engage people who have various skills. And then we also relate in an arrangement which we call association with other institutions, mainly the universities, research institutions, and so on. And we harness those skills in those respective organizations in order to form teams that work on development projects. So one of the things that we have done over the years is to form those networks with those institutions I've just mentioned. The second area is to actually implement projects, development projects, which are addressing identifiable needs within communities. And these range from livestock production, especially for Ndebele, because that's a big livelihood or source of livelihood. And we first of all identify the needs. One of the needs that has always emerged from the different districts is that productivity has been low amongst the communities. When we talk about productivity, we are talking about numbers maybe of cows produced per year. We also talk about numbers of animals sold to the open market per year. And those things are important in terms of income for households and in fact uplifting the standards of living of those communities. We also have looked at the local institutions is one area which we have found to be lacking. In other words, the communities are not as well organized as they should be in order to access markets, input and output markets, in order to engage important institutions like government and present business cases which will help them to uplift their lives. So that's one area, one other area which we have found important in other building local institutions. We have also had experience of evaluating projects, other people's projects, which may have been implemented in these communities. We evaluate them. In other words, we find what has been done in relation to the objectives that would have been set, and then we present the information or critique of what should have been done, and that way these organizations benefit in terms of doing better in future. So these are some of the things that we have done.
Your organization gives an impression that there is a lot of technology that is used. You know, it's the Institute of Rural Technologies. So what is the technological aspect of the organization that you are involved in?
Yes, our thrust is technology. And we are looking at that term very broadly. Normally, when people talk about technology, people think about gadgets that are used to do something. That is one of the things that we promote as appropriate and as we find appropriate. For instance, if we are thinking about choosing breeds that should be used for cattle production, we would be promoting knowledge about choosing the breeds and about what those breeds need in order to sustainably perform the way they are expected to perform. That's technology in the form of knowledge. There is also the sense of technology in the form of organizing oneself as a community, because institutions are very important in development because they harness the numbers, the skills, the commitment, the passion that is in these communities in order to perform development work. And we find a lot of or we attach a lot of importance to developing that aspect as well. So we have had quite a number of organizations as agro-dealers. We have formed agro-dealer associations. We have formed livestock production trusts. We have also trained them on governance and even business planning and so on, so that all those are technologies. So it's a broad term that we are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you also talked about, you are building capacities for rural areas and partnering rural areas. I remember one project that we actually went together was the Ndaba Zinduna project, where people are trying to revive dams and sources of water. How do you intervene in such situations?
The important thing to start off with is to identify needs. If communities are very clear about their need, it becomes their own project. They would support it. And secondly, it's involving those communities, preferably in a leading role. And our role would then be to strengthen them to lead, and therefore hope for sustainability as time moves. So those two things are very important. And once we have identified the need, then it could be a question of finding out again what the gaps are in terms of finding solutions to those needs. If, for instance, is finance, we then try to link those communities with people who could finance. It could be the donor world, where we put up proposals together with the community and indicate their presence and involvement in that proposal, and present those, and in some cases we may find a bit of luck and get supported. And because the community is involved, it makes it clear that the thrust is about development and not enriching, let's say, organizations like ours. So it's really identifying needs, it's really involving the community, and thirdly is facilitating processes that are about finding solutions.
What would you say are your strengths as an organization?
Our very visible strength is technical. We have the network, we have the people in various disciplines which together would support systems that could be strong and give the desired results. This is really our strength. And then we have the networks at the moment. When I am talking about networks here, I will emphasize those of the communities. The communities we have worked with trust us, they know us, and they are free to either share their needs with us, and they also will believe and have seen that once we have agreed that we will do certain things, we really do that. And also we don't leave them outside. Their contributions are taken note of, and they are brought on board, especially where we see that they will improve the situation.
And the year has just started. And
yes.
We have been, I know last year was not easy, but for this year and going forward, what are your priorities?
One of the things that is very clear is that we have a good rainy season. And that it brings a lot of opportunities for us in development, particularly for agriculture. There are issues to do with access to inputs now that rain is here. There are issues to do with how those inputs could be best used. And there are issues to do with what I will call value addition, especially for enterprises like the livestock. People have to take care of their health because with rainy a year like this, tick-borne diseases and so on are very high. And we are very keen to work with these communities and share them as many strategies as possible about solving these potential hazards to their enterprises. So yeah, this year we see that big opportunities, and we will be working very closely with the rural communities on these aspects.
You talk about the good rainy seasons, and one of the issues that affect Matebeleland is water bodies. I mean, do you have any plans to maybe partner with communities in water harvesting? Because we have lots of rain, but some communities don't even have dams, and 6 months down the line, they'll be having drought.
The drought story is a phenomenon that is a problem for this part of the country. But with an opportunity like this one, there are a number of things that can be done. I'll start off with the feed supply for the cattle. I think for now, people are thinking all this grass around is a nuisance. But we are encouraging these communities to organize themselves, harvest this grass, store it, and at the right time feed their animals, including adding value to the grass in terms of including some materials that we know will increase the quality of the feed. That's point number one. On the water side, we are working with our networks. We are not experts in water, but we have partners that are experts in water. And there are efforts to drill bores to harness water in small sort of fashions, like blocking small rivers to create wells or, let's say, water pools that can be useful for livestock even during the dry season, and the people themselves. And they also, once they have, let's say, bores that they've been assisted with, we also make sure that there is a local institution. Normally we call those water point management committees, who will then ensure that there is good governance, there is planning about sharing water with the households as well as with their animals, and so on and so on. And so these are some of our contributions that we try to do. But one thing for sure is that there is a long way to go around harnessing water. People are not, haven't really internalized the culture of harnessing water very widely. To the level that you would compare maybe with areas or countries like Israel and places like. We are very far from that. And so we think it is an area which we need to encourage. We need to seek as many sort of strategies that we can in order to harness this water and then be able to use or have it even during dry years, which we know are going to be coming in the future.
And as we conclude, what are some of the challenges that you're facing as an organization?
One of the challenges that we are facing is that we are a growing organization. In other words, our financial base is not at the level that we would desire to have. But we are working and trying to address that through various strategies, including partnering with other organizations. But we still need more of strategies that would make us grow financially. The other challenge that we are facing is that communities themselves are in an environment where there are a lot of things happening, and what I would call things that sometimes detract concentration on development. Think about time, just simple time. The amount of time that these communities now are spending on other things that not necessarily contribute to their livelihoods is unbelievable. So that's one challenge. But we try to encourage the communities to plan well within those circumstances, and so that they can continue giving time to development work. The other thing is droughts. It's a challenge in the sense that it's now frequent, it's now severe, and these communities are weak in terms of capacity to withstand these stresses from drought. So the challenge is sufficient funds really to help these communities. So we find that the amount of work that is around is plenty, especially due to climate change, and yet funding is a bit limited. So these are some of the major challenges that we're facing.
Do you deal with individuals? Can an individual come here and say, I have a project that I want to do in my community? Or you deal with organized structures like a village, a development community? How do you deal with communities?
We have dealt with individuals, I would say, in a smaller scale. People do come here sometimes to get free advice, as it were, in the sense that if somebody has come and is inquiring about an area we know, we don't necessarily refuse to give them knowledge and skills around maybe possible solutions. There are also individuals who have come to us and agreed or are prepared to be charged a fee, kind of consultant's fee, in order to develop, let's say, a project plan or a business plan. And we have followed that up with those people just to see how they are progressing and continuously advise where we can, on issues that they may be meeting. So yes, we deal with individuals, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah. Lastly, when someone has a query, they have a comment, they need consultancy, how do they contact you?
We have a website. We have individuals and their contact details, phones, and emails. But as a headquarters here, we are located on Tongogara, number 49A, between 3rd and 4th Avenue in Bulawayo.
Growing up, it was always my dream to come to the big city, where I can make money, where, there is life. But now I'm thinking that maybe there is more life in rural areas. Maybe there are more opportunities in rural areas. Using the technologies that we now have and all the developments that have happened, we can actually make our rural areas more hospitable, more greener, and make money out of in the rural areas, because we have the land. We can try and make sure that there's water, and we have more better quality of life. I mean, look at this year in the city of Bulawayo, for example, we've had a serious problem with the water. And imagine the hours that you're spending queuing at a bowser or at a bowl. But that's quite a different scenario altogether when you're in rural areas. So we are encouraging people that, let's look at how we can improve our rural areas, modernize them, and make them better places to stay so that they are more attractive, so that young people who are in urban areas can actually go and start businesses and ventures in rural areas. I hope you have learned a lot from this program, and those who are willing, who have ideas, you can actually interact with the Institute for Rural Technologies, invest in some of the ideas, learn from them, get them to mentor you, and make sure that we make our rural areas prosper and have better rural economies. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again in other programs, have a good day.